I bought this camera for 50 bucks. Now a collector's offering me a house. Frank wasn't expecting much when he pushed open the door to Lambert's Antiques. Just killing time. It was a cold Tuesday afternoon. He'd already finished his crossword, and the heater in his truck was acting up again. The place smelled like mothballs and old books. Not in a bad way, just lived in. Familiar. He wandered past a shelf of cracked snow globes, a pile of war-era postcards, a faded Pepsi clock stuck at 4:17. Then something caught his eye. Tucked behind a ceramic owl and a broken lava lamp was a camera. Old, gold and black, solid. He leaned in. Not plastic, metal. Heavier than it looked. The kind of weight that meant it was built before everything went digital and hollow. Rangefinder style, he guessed. He'd seen a few like it online, mostly Leica or Soviet-era knockoffs. There was no nameplate, no case, no strap, just a little handwritten tag. Vintage camera, untested, $50. Frank turned it over in his hands. The dials moved smooth. The shutter clicked like it had a secret. The shop owner looked up from behind the counter. Found that in a box with thermoses. You into cameras? Frank nodded. A little. Probably doesn't work, but it looks cool, right? Frank gave a half shrug. Yeah, I'll take it. And now, he didn't know why he bought it exactly. He had others at home, a Pentax, an old Canon AE1, even a busted Argus that never quite focused right. But something about this one. Maybe it was the way it felt in his hands. Maybe it was the weight of it. Maybe it was just instinct. He paid in cash, walked out into the cold. Camera in a plastic grocery bag. No idea what he'd just brought home. He didn't touch it for a few days. The camera sat on his kitchen table, beside the half-finished jigsaw puzzle and a coffee-stained copy of Popular Mechanics. The kind of thing you mean to get to, but don't. Frank had learned at 61 to let time do the talking. He didn't rush toward things, especially not old ones. But that weekend, with rain in the forecast and nothing good on TV, he finally took a closer look. First thing he noticed was the lens. Not just old, odd. No markings, no manufacturer, no serial, just faint etching around the glass, like it had been inscribed by hand. At the bottom edge, 3 tiny letters, almost invisible, IVK. He squinted, pulled out a flashlight, looked again. Yup, still there. He popped the back open, slow, careful. Inside, everything was intact. Clean, even. No rust, no corrosion. The shutter curtain looked handmade, not quite right. The thing that stuck with him most. It felt expensive, but unfinished, like someone built it for function, not show. That night, he took a few photos of it on his phone. Nothing fancy, just natural light, every angle, front, back, top down. One of the shutter, one close-up of the lens. He posted them to a small vintage camera forum he used to lurk on. Title: Any clue what this is? Bought it for $50. Didn't expect much. Most replies were the usual. Cool find. Looks like a modded Kiev. Could be a Japanese clone. Worth it for the aesthetics alone. But then, 5 hours later, a private message came in. From Shinjuku.f8. Real name unknown. Japanese IP. Avatar, a black and white photo of a Leica 3. I believe you have something very rare, possibly unique. Do not attempt to clean or open further. I would like to speak. Frank raised an eyebrow. He clicked on the guy's profile. 8,000 plus posts, all about rangefinders, Leica history. Restoration threads going back 14 years. Not your average enthusiast. He replied, "Sure, happy to chat. Just don't expect me to sell anything." They messaged for hours. The stranger asked questions Frank didn't expect. Things like, Is the internal winding spring flat or contoured? How many notches on the pressure plate screw? Are there weld marks inside the viewfinder housing? Frank didn't know half the answers, but he tried. By midnight, the man sent one last message. I believe it may be an internal prototype, possibly made in Germany post-war. I only know of one other camera with that lens signature. It is in a museum. Frank stared at the screen. This guy didn't want money, didn't ask for anything, didn't even try to buy it. Just told him, please store it safely, away from light and heat. Someone will. He didn't sleep much that night. Not from fear, from something else. That old feeling he hadn't felt in years. Not since he was a kid, flipping through dusty National Geographics and wondering how real things got where they were. Could I really have found something that rare? Just sitting on a shelf? By Wednesday, someone had already emailed him. Not a stranger on a forum. A man named Victor Lemoyne. Paris address in the signature. Subject line, camera inquiry, possible acquisition. Mr. Franklin, I was shown photos of the rangefinder in your possession by a mutual contact in the collector's circle. Would you consider selling the piece? If so, I'd be happy to begin with a verbal offer. 22,000 euros. Wire transfer. Immediate pickup via courier. Frank blinked. 22,000 euros for a camera he bought for 50 bucks. He read it 3 times. Closed the laptop. Didn't tell anyone. Not yet. But then a second email came the next day. Different sender. A man from Toronto. Offer 36,000 USD. And then another. A collector in Berlin. Name your price. Frank sat at his kitchen table with the lights dimmed and the camera in his hands. Not polished. Not pretty. Still a little dusty around the corners. But suddenly, famous. He could feel it humming. Not literally, but in a way only people who've lived long enough understand. The kind of hum that says, pay attention, this matters. A piece of paper. He called his son. Hey, Rick, remember that old camera I picked up last week? The weird-looking one? Yeah, what about it? Frank hesitated. Somebody offered me 36 grand for it. Rick was quiet. Then, you serious? As a heart attack. Rick laughed. Jesus, Dad, that's insane. You selling? I don't know yet. Well, can I borrow it? Frank chuckled. Nice try, kid. That weekend, a local camera shop owner named Elliot Graham, one of the few remaining analog specialists in the state, agreed to look at it under magnification. He took one look through his loupe and said, oh hell, this isn't just a rare piece, this is pre-catalog. You see this here? He pointed to a micro-etched ring around the lens base. That's a non-standard mount, military grade maybe, or field prototype. Any guess on value? Frank asked. Graham leaned back, eyes wide. I wouldn't even try, but I can tell you this. Nobody's seen one like it on the open market in 30 years. That night, Frank made a decision. He wasn't going to list it online. He wasn't going to auction it off to the highest bidder. He was going to let the offers come to him, quietly, and in the meantime, he wanted answers. By Monday, a representative from a private watch and camera archive in Zurich reached out. By Wednesday, a man named Sandro offered to fly in and inspect it in person. And then came phone call number 20. This time from a broker in Tokyo. Mr. Franklin, apologies if this is abrupt, but the IVK markings, we've traced them to a defunct optics division of a German company dissolved after World War II. There's reason to believe your camera is either a prototype smuggled out during that era or one of the few built in complete secrecy. Frank said nothing. Do you understand what that might mean historically? I think I'm starting to. The man paused, then added, We're prepared to begin negotiations at 6 figures. USD. Apologies for the erratas. Frank stared out the window. Rain tapped against the glass in the next room. He didn't feel rich. He didn't feel lucky. He felt strange. Like the world had quietly turned to face him. He thought of all the years he'd spent working double shifts at the community college, the field trips he paid for out of pocket, the kids who forgot his name, the ones who didn't, and now this, a camera on a dusty shelf waiting for him like it knew. And then he opened the sock drawer beside his bed, took the camera out of its towel and whispered, "What are you?" And for once in his life, something whispered back. Frank didn't rush. Offers came, some with numbers, some with stories. A man in Milan claimed to have once owned a similar unit, lost in a house fire. A museum in Oslo requested provenance. A private collector in New York offered $127,000. No inspection, no questions. Wire ready. He sat with all of it. For days, the camera stayed on the table next to his breakfast mug. He'd eat toast, sip coffee, and just look at it, like he was waiting for it to speak first. Then came the invitation. A closed auction in Geneva. Strictly by referral. No press, no fanfare. Just 6 bidders, all pre-qualified, all anonymous. All known in circles, where vintage Leica prototypes were traded like fine art. Frank hesitated. It meant flying, signing papers, trusting people he didn't know with something he still barely understood. But in the end, he said yes. The hotel room in Geneva was quiet. White sheets, no TV, just a window overlooking a gray lake and the kind of cold that made your breath feel like a story. He brought the camera in a padded hard case, custom built. TSA didn't even blink when he walked it through. At the auction, they offered champagne. He refused. A man in a navy suit, soft voice, no last name, greeted him, took the camera gently, and walked it into the back room under halogen lights. Frank waited in a glass room alone, watching numbers climb on a screen. First offer, $70,000. Then $94,000. Then one that simply said, Zurich, $138,000. He exhaled, not because of the money, because he realized someone, somewhere, knew exactly what this was. On direction, the winning bid came from bidder number 6. Private foundation, no location disclosed. Final price, $162,400. Frank closed his eyes. Not from relief, not even from pride, from something closer to peace. 3 days later, the funds hit his account. He didn't tell many people. He paid off his son's mortgage, opened college accounts for the grandkids, left the rest sitting quietly, like a dog by the door. He still wore the same corduroy jacket, still drove the same truck, still bought store-brand cereal and read the obituaries like they were invitations. But at night, when the house was still, he'd sit with a cup of tea and think, maybe that camera found me, not the other way around. What would you have done? Would you sell it? Or keep the only one left? Hit subscribe. I haven't even told you what they found inside the lens. Frank didn't frame the receipt. He didn't hang the auction photo on his wall. Didn't call the local paper. Didn't even tell his neighbor Paul, who still thought the camera was some fancy old Canon. Instead, he did 3 things. First, he wrote a letter to the foundation that bought it, thanked them for valuing it, asked if they'd ever put it on display. Please add 1 line on the card. Found in a secondhand shop in Ohio. 2025. Donor, F. Franklin. They agreed. A part 1. Second, he used some of the money to restore the old darkroom in his basement. Bought fresh chemicals, new trays, even rewired the ventilation. Not because he needed it, but because he missed the smell of fixer. Missed the magic of watching images appear from nothing. He shot a roll of black and white film that spring. Local stuff. Hands, shoes, trees, shadows on the side of his garage. No one else would ever see it, but he smiled when he held the prints. Third, and most important, he took his grandson to the same shop where it all began, Lambert's. Same brick walls, same smell of dust and vinyl. Different camera on the shelf this time. Plastic, modern, kind of ugly. Go ahead, Frank said. Pick something. Don't think too hard. The boy chose a tin toy. Said he liked the color. Good, Frank said. That's how you start. Years later, when Frank was gone, they'd open his safe and find the letter from the museum, the photo of the camera, the journal he kept with page after page of stories, handwritten, quiet, exact. On the last page, just 5 words. Time finds who it needs.